Comic book art is a strange and mysterious beast. It can sometimes give you glimpses into worlds you've never seen before and wonders your eyes could only marvel at. And at other times, it can show you grotesque horrors that have never been uttered beyond the words of Rob Liefeld. We're not specifically talking about artists here. We're more so going to be talking into, because I know the title will be vague, this is more so going to be an idea of superheroes aesthetically, not just in how they're drawn, but how their bodies are proportioned, how their physiques are. Do superheroes need to look a certain way, and are we slowly moving into a different era of superheroes where we're getting a more varying degree of body types, and just in terms of how they can function as these impossible beings they are. And joining me on this multi-layered topic, I've decided to reach my grubby mitts out to multiple ends of the internet, grabbing not just one fabulous guest to be my hostage on this YouTube show, but two for the price of one. So yes, joining me will be the ever wonderful Mo.
Hello everyone, glad to be joining again for the 16th time.
And the indomitable Jake.
Hey, how's it going? This is, I guess, episode 2 for me, being with Alfie on his wonderful network here.
That's before we start giving you your healthcare. So yes, we're going to be delving into this topic, and to kind of open up with it, I'll just pose a question to you, Mo. How do you feel superheroes aesthetically should be or have traditionally been?
Now that's a really interesting question, because when we think about what a superhero looks like, we get a general idea. They're all like 6'5", 220 pounds of absolute muscle and wearing tights. But it goes beyond that, because the way superheroes have looked have kind of both evolved yet stayed the same since basically the creation of the superhero. And when we really consider that the difference that they should really have, it becomes a more layered topic of which superhero should look a certain way, and which outfit and how each outfit should differ according to each superhero and their personality and their character.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's interesting because, like you said, Mo, for the longest time, everybody kind of thought superheroes have to be like these buff, jacked dudes, these slim, sleek, curvy women. And I think, like, as we've progressed as a comic book audience, and as we've progressed as a medium, we've kind of realized that muscles don't make the hero, and more importantly, muscles don't make the story. The best Superman stories are never Superman stories where he wins with the sheer, perfection of his physique. Same thing with Flash or Spider-Man or anything. I've never seen a hero overcome a villain because they look great in the costume they're wearing. So I feel like, even Power Girl, no, yeah, and so I think that we're finally at a place now where we are realizing that we can come up with new looks, or characters don't have to be the physical, or the perfect physical specimen they always have been.
Yeah, and I feel like kind of touching on the perfection aspect, and Mo, you kind of brought this up. I think I want to really draw out is how the costumes are drawn on these bodies. A lot of artists will talk about how basically drawing superheroes in modern comics, like the Jim Lee style, or even going earlier back to what's a good example? Even Jack Kirby kind of had this to a minor extent, because you could still kind of tell it was cloth with Jack Kirby. But a lot of artists just basically say that drawing superheroes is basically drawing naked figures that you then draw on top of. Wonder Woman's costume, even when it's supposed to be armor, is ridiculously form-fitting. Superman's costume, even have to look at any artist depiction apart from some few, it always looks more akin to blue-coloured skin and cloth. And while that does help emphasize these fantastic feats, and you really get a nice intricacy of like shading and body proportions in almost like a Greek god sense, in terms of like how the Greeks would sculpture their gods, we've effectively turned our superhero drawings into sculptures on the page. How do you both feel on that, like superhero costumes being so tight? Because it does make some degree of sense to characters like the Flash that they wouldn't want to have flippy bits out everywhere. You want it to be form-fitting for like sleekness, but how far do you think they should take it?
Mo, I'll let you go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Mo.
Oh yeah, it does bother me. Like it's kind of a pet peeve for me whenever I'm reading a comic, and I notice that there aren't like any visible distinction between skin and suit. Even if it's something so simple as just a little ripple or a little like crease on the suit, and I like that because it shows that it's not just blue colored skin, as you said. But maybe we need more, and sometimes it doesn't make sense. As you said, like the Flash totally makes sense. It should be like the tightest thing ever because he runs really fast. Makes sense. Superman, maybe not so much. Maybe like you could have a more like normal looking suit. Batman is one of the characters that I don't buy having a skin tight like lycra bodysuit that shows his abs and striations and all of that, because he does need like some layer of protection, and he just looks like he's wearing like an undershirt that doesn't really look it looks great like aesthetically, but in a practical sense maybe not so much.
Yeah, and I think that that's like a huge thing that you just touched on there, is that like aesthetically, yeah, it looks good for Superman to have a suit on that, you know, shows his Kryptonian abs and, you know, all their 8-pack glory. Or, you know, for, you know, someone like you mentioned, like Power Girl, like for someone like Power Girl to have a suit that like literally has a window to her breasts on it, like aesthetically that might have been pleasing for a time, but practically that really doesn't make sense. And like I've never really understood why spandex was the go-to material. I guess for a long time though, like if you think that, you know, way back when comics were just getting made, like complicated costumes were not really something I think that people wanted. Already you were asking people to like invest into these, you know, larger than life characters. Why make someone invest in something that they can barely track with their eyes because there's so many different things going on with it? And so, you know, like you were saying, Alfie, like they're basically naked characters that they just draw a suit over. You know, that's probably the easiest way for an artist to go about drawing that, though, because for someone like the Flash, like I cannot imagine having to draw the Flash in kinetic motion while also having to, you know, draw a suit that had all these ridges and different segments on it. And even like a character like Batman that has several distinctive parts, the cape, the cowl, the gloves, the boots, the belt, like that's a lot of different pieces to be worrying about when you're drawing, you know, on a panel and having to worry about all these different angles. So like I do kind of understand where an artist might like the, you know, the skin tight nature of the suit, just because it's, you know, it's probably easier for them to draw and they've already got so much they've got to worry about when it comes to crafting these books. But yeah, like practically it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like I understand that, you know, Superman has abs of steel, but like if you take a kick to your abs, you know, it knocks the wind out of you, and like you're just kind of exposing them there when your suit's that tight. It's like highlighting a weak point on your enemy. You know, Superman's literally giving you like.
I don't think I'd go that far, especially
I don't
for
know.
Superman.
It's like hit me here. You know what I'm saying? Like hit me in the ass.
I guess I'll be devil's advocate here because I feel this is interesting. I think we're delving into like an interesting topic here. Is I feel like going back all the way to the source of this quote unquote like thing that's happened. So Superman specifically, like why would he wear something like you say it's form-fitting that in most depictions, if we're just like talking about classic Superman's costume, not getting into any reinventions, it's basically just what Christopher Reeve wore, where it's like a cotton suit basically.
Right.
Or so why would he wear that? For Superman specifically, I like the idea that when he approaches someone, he doesn't want anyone to think he's hiding anything because he's so powerful and he's so almighty. He wears bright, identifiable colours that are his gimmick. He wears something close to his skin and that's tight so he can wear it underneath his suit as Clark Kent so it can fold it up. Like, people ask, how does Superman get changed? It's like, well, the cape's very, very thin material, so he just, like, literally super folds it and hides it in his pocket or something. Or like the boots are also very thin because Superman doesn't need to wear soles. He's Superman. He's not exactly going to get blisters blisters on his toes. But yeah, so I think that justifies that in that case. But like the whole ab reveal thing you mentioned, Jake, is just, yes, it's also maybe like a weakness if you're going to get punched there, but also like specifically Superman, who is the guy who set this baseline for everyone, because every superhero costume ever is based off Superman. So he's the baseline here. He gets punched, he's not going to feel it unless it's like Doomsday or something, so I think he can get away with it for the style. Once we get into more street level characters, especially more street level female characters, like whatever Huntress's costume has got going on, where her entire midriff is exposed and all her arms and legs are exposed, and she can get cut and shot and stabbed in a multitude of different ways. Or hell, not even just female, freaking a classic Robin's costume has got so much skin showing.
There's no armor. Like, Robin just put on a t-shirt and then like a pair of underwear, like briefs. He put on briefs and a t-shirt and a cape and then went out. Like, how is he protected at all? He's not.
I think the real question is, what kid? This is why he's Robin, equal to be Batman's partner, because the amount of balls it takes for a 12-year-old kid to go on the Gotham streets wearing that has to be superhuman.
Yeah, he's the real superpowered one out of the two. Yeah, I mean, that's crazy.
We're all making fun of this, but let's not pretend that we wouldn't want to see like Brenton Thwaites wearing that on Titans some episode, just randomly wearing briefs and a shirt.
Because it is that kind of, I guess I'll pose this to you, Mo, because I think out of both of us here, you're like, well, all three of us, but you specifically are like the most into like the body weight scene and actually physically building yourself up. And you see, like, the most realistic interpretations of DC heroes we can get, and Marvel heroes too, is what we've seen by, like, Alex Ross drawing them, and the way he draws physiques. And if you look at how he draws classic Robin, this 12-year-old kid has got, like, the jackhammered veins in his neck. And admittedly, that is how he was drawn back in the day, but, like, are we pushing superhero physiques to the point where we're starting to just lose the sense of these people could actually move if they were that buff?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because at some point it becomes too much, and at some point it doesn't even make sense. Like, why is the Flash so muscular when it's physically impossible for him to be that way? I mean, think about it. If the Flash has to eat like 10,000 calories, and that's lowballing it, just to survive on a daily basis. Imagine how much he'd have to be in a caloric surplus to even gain the smallest bit of muscle. He'd be blowing his CSI salary on an insane amount of food every day, to the point where he wouldn't even have time to be the Flash. He'd just be eating like every 5 seconds to get like 1 ounce of muscle on him. So it never made sense to me that the Flash would have muscles. And I like the way Francis Manapul drew him in the New 52, because he's slim. It makes more sense. I never understood why people attacked both Grant Gustin and Ezra Miller for being too thin or not muscular enough. It's like, why should they be like big Henry Cavill buff bodies? Doesn't make sense. Same thing for Robin. Someone like Blue Beetle, Jaime Reyes, who's just a teenager. A teenager, it's not possible for him to look that way. Or someone like Firestorm. At some point, it really needs suspension of disbelief to believe that these people could look this certain way. And that lack of variety, it does kind of put down the art for me a little bit. I really like it when we see like a big change between superhero, the way they're drawn in general, both suits and faces and bodies, especially bodies.
Well, and you brought up a really good point there about the Flash, because, like, to me, I always like the Flash to be drawn in a way that he doesn't have muscles on his suit, because, like, if you think about it, like a runner's physique, they're like that skinny ripped, that people talk about, where like they've got muscles, but you don't really see them because they don't like carry the aesthetic of the muscle. They're just using it to its maximum capacity.
Exactly.
And so I like it when the Flash is drawn very thin, very wiry. I don't like it when the Flash has defined muscles on his suit. But like when you brought up a character like Firestorm or like Jaime Reyes, like why does a character like Firestorm that can like fire beams of energy out of his hands need to work out at all? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What is the point for a character? And this is almost getting like too hypercritical, I think, about it, but like,
no, I think it's
yeah, but like, why is he not 320 pounds, pudgy and overweight? You know what I'm saying? Like, what effort does he have to put into it? He can fly and change the molecular structure of things. Like, he doesn't have to do any physical labor. But like a character like Plastic Man, he looks at his best when he's wiry and thin and stretching out, like, and he's Eel O'Brien. So like Eel O'Brien, you would imagine someone that's sleek and slimy and skinny that can fit through the cracks and stuff like that. A character like Batman is supposed to be like the physical peak a human can be. Obviously he's going to have these, gigantic muscles, not like Kelly Jones gigantic, but they're going to be profound. I don't know. I would almost prefer, like a character like Wonder Woman too. Wonder Woman is always depicted as being very sleek and slim. And while that makes sense, like you would also think that Wonder Woman would be buff, like muscular, because she's an Amazon, and all the other Amazons are kind of depicted like that, the more like muscular built women. And Wonder Woman's like, no, she's just, the most gorgeous woman you've ever seen. Like, because you don't see any muscles on her. And I don't understand that. What is your take on that, Alfie?
Well, I think I'll just go to kind of just get a question, because we've kind of managed to avoid it, but I think it's something you can't really avoid in this topic. And I think it directly applies to the Wonder Woman, and maybe less so the Superman and Batman stuff. This all really does come down to like the sexualization of characters in comics, males and females.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like, how do you guys feel on that? Because effectively that's always going to be a thing, because media sex sells, and like there's nothing wrong with appreciating the human body. It's a beautiful thing, and like drawing figures, because people are very ashamed of like sexual figures and anything, and it makes a conversation hard. It's why you can't show a nipple in a comic, but you can show children getting murdered, apparently. It's a very fucked up way our society views stuff like that. But how things are portrayed, where we're not celebrating the body, we're celebrating a very specific standard, where all the men have to be these like gigantic, huge, buff, macho, masculine figures, and all the women have to be smaller, petite, very curvaceous women with no signs of chub on them at all, despite having double D breasts. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, Mo, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that Alfie does have a point, that initially it seems appealing because yeah, it makes sense for the superheroes to get in the both readers. If you're gonna have the male readers to read your Wonder Woman comic, you're gonna draw her as looking very sexy, and maybe that flew back in the day. I think we've moved past that now, but it's still going on for some reason. And same thing with the male characters. You make them look as sexy as possible for really no reason. But it is like kind of a double thing, because people always talk about the sexualization of female characters. But at the same time, you look at the male characters and it's like, I mean, I don't like. Why do I have to read a Superman comic where I look at him? Maybe not Superman, because Superman, okay, that's debatable. But if I'm reading like a, I don't know, like Blue Beetle or Green Arrow or even Batman, I'm looking at him. I'm like, man, this is just like so unrelatable to a whole new level.
Well, and even think about something like, that's a good point. Like the Aquaman movie. You know, like Aquaman is supposed to have, you know, like this regal armor on, and I get it. Like I get the whole aspect, but like they cast Jason Momoa because the dude looks good with his shirt off. You know what I'm saying? Like he spent a majority of that movie with his shirt off in the water because that looked good, you know? And so yeah. I really like what you're saying there.
Yeah. And even, it might sound a little bit like, oh man, these guys are salty because they wish they looked like that. No, it really has nothing to do with it. I'm looking at it from a relatability standpoint. And even as someone who's as silly as it is, I read comics and I get inspired to go to the gym reading superhero comics more than anything else. Or even watching like the movie. Like if you bring up Jason Momoa, Aquaman, I go watch Aquaman. By the end of the movie, I'm like, oh, well, shit, I just have to go hit the gym now because I just saw that. But at the same time, it does reach a point where it becomes just a little too unrelatable for even the superheroes that are supposed to be relatable. I did just want to bring up a really good example of something that perfectly balances that, both suit and body, and that's Ed Hannigan's Green Arrow during like the old Grell run in the 80s. He drew Green Arrow looking very realistic. He wasn't super jacked. He wasn't like, he didn't have like an 8-pack of steel. He looked like a normal, healthy guy. And it didn't even show in the suit. The suit was also kind of baggy. He had the sleeves, which Green Arrow rarely ever has now. He had like big baggy sleeves and just a normal looking suit, normal looking kind of wool suit that looked very normal. It wasn't spandex, it wasn't tight, it wasn't even form fitting. It looked a bit baggy at times. His body was very normal. He looked like, this guy works out for practical reasons. He doesn't work out to look like a supermodel. So that's just a really good example that I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the difference, just in kind of closing, is we have to remember, like, it's not just like when we see Wonder Woman looking beautiful, it's not just seen as like, oh, it's a sex figure for males as well. It's like, my girlfriend will tell me this, and every other people will say this. It's just like, women like to see beautiful women too, because it's just people like to see that expression of beauty, and men like to see, like you say, if you see Aquaman, you see Jason Momoa, he's absolutely ripped. That can be an encouraging, motivational thing, because you're like, oh yes, that looks awesome, I want to get something close to that, or even just motivate myself to be the best I can be. And superheroes is all about motivation. And I think it's very good that obviously these people who are doing very active work, they're going to look more sporty than just the average Joe on the street. But I feel like the key difference, and what Mo kind of pointed out here, is when it starts looking from healthy to that like extreme giant huge muscles, where like Batman, well, like, again, like Kelly Jones, is where like the bicep will be bigger than the head, and like if people in real life had those proportions, then they're obviously like juicing or something, and it's not healthy. And we shouldn't want our superheroes to look that ridiculously ripped. Like, Superman shouldn't really have a six-pack, because how does he even work out? His muscles are natural. Like, he doesn't have time to get definition, because there's nothing that could really strain him, like, unless he has like a Red Sun gym or something. Again, that's going into the more like nitpicky, but I do kind of feel like there is a healthy borderline of where you can say, yes, this is an active character, like unlike Firestorm, who, like Jake I think rightly said, doesn't have to have any specific body type. He can do whatever he wants. But like, say Spider-Man, he does all these gymnastic poses. He has to pose in a certain way. He'll have a very slim, lanky, but kind of defined body. He doesn't have to be buff or gain muscle, because Peter Parker doesn't have the time to visit his aunt. Where would he go time to go to the gym? I feel like that's the key, is like healthy superhero bodies, all for superhero costumes that look like clothing. That's what I prefer, but at the same time, there's an easy way that we can go into the other direction. And I guess I'm just posing to you two, do you have any closing thoughts along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you know, I'm trying to think of like the best superhero costumes, and you know, it's easy to say Batman and Superman and stuff like that, but like, to me, some of the most iconic superhero looks, you know, someone like the Sandman, like the classic Sandman,
Yes.
not Neil Gaiman, like the dude wore a duster and a gas mask and like a business suit, like it looked so good. Or even the Question, you know, heroes like Black Canary, I can't think of a costume that she's had that's been ridiculously sexual, you know, other than the way that, you know, her body is drawn. And I just think it's very important that we've kind of I think we've been pretty positive, but I think we really like need to appreciate how far the medium has come, because is it happening today still? Yes. But at the same time, we have hit a point now where the audience as a whole realizes that these characters don't need to be sexual. They don't need to be drawn in a sexual manner. They can be sexual, but they just need to be healthy. Like, if our heroes are supposed to inspire us, the way that they should be drawn is a way to inspire us to be healthy.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I guess I think we've managed to go through, despite having like such... This is a topic that really goes back all the way to the dawn of superheroes and then continues to the modern day. So there's like such a breadth of topics we could talk about, but I think we managed to get like a good overview of everything while still managed to keep it entertaining. At least, if it's not entertaining, please feel to comment down below and sue me, but leave my two friends out of this because it's entirely my fault. But yes, speaking of my two friends, Mo, Jake, I can't thank you enough for joining me with this. I had a lot of fun, and I hope you two have enjoyed it as well.
I definitely did. Yeah, thank you.
And if you'd like to hear more from these two wonderful fellas, there are videos with each of them in the channel, which I will link to, and we will have more in the future, so be sure to subscribe and keep an eye out for that. But yes, I've been Alfie.
I've been
Jake.
And they almost fused for a second there, but we managed to get it out just a little bit. Yes, and we've been your Geeks for Fun today, so take it easy, folks.
Have a good one.